years.
And what are you studying?
Mass comm.
Right.
Okay. So, can I ask you what are the obstacles in journalism? What journalists face right now?
Are you talking in a global sense, in a general sense, or in the Malaysian context?
In a general sense, and then you can go deep into the Malaysian context.
Well, in a general sense, I think in countries where there is freedom of information,
Yeah.
And things like that, the work of a journalist is far much easier compared to countries like Malaysia and whatnot.
Okay.
So in the Malaysian context, as you know, most of the media corporations in Malaysia were either owned by the previous government or linked to the previous government, or had business owners with the political affiliations. And you had the Printing Presses and Publications Act, which further stifled the space for media freedom.
Yeah.
And Malaysia Kini was a novelty of sorts. We started under an environment that was really stifling, okay? And we don't have business funders or whatnot. It's all based on subscription and advertising revenue and other projects that are carried out by various arms within the organization, tech projects and whatnot. So we are self-sustainable in that sense.
Yeah.
So prior to the last general election, working in Malaysia Kini was like navigating through a minefield. Okay?
Yeah.
It was definitely not easy.
Yeah.
We had
Thank you.
the government was always watching us.
Yeah.
There are a slew of laws that can be used against you. From the Sedition Act to so many things.
Yes.
The Multimedia Commission was one which could just block access to your website, without giving proper reasons or whatnot. So it was really crazy. So in terms of obstacles, that was it for us for 20 years.
A lot of threats from the previous
a lot
government.
of threats. It was a chess game. Every day you just have to, like I said, it was a minefield. So every day you come in and you just try to negotiate through that minefield, hoping that you don't get blown up at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And somehow we managed to do that for 20 years. And now that the government has changed, and the new government has promised to repeal all these laws that are restrictive or that are against
Suppressing.
oppressive laws and whatnot. Those things are a little bit easier to say in terms of doing journalism in Malaysia.
Yeah.
But there is also this trend that's our office cat back
Yeah, that's so cute. Okay.
that we get slapped with lawsuits. That's another new recent trend. Everybody sues.
Yeah.
We're talking about defamation suits that run into hundreds of millions of ringgit. So even when a suit is filed, just replying to that suit would set us back about 40,000. Just replying to a legal letter, not even a suit.
Yes.
Just a legal letter to consult a lawyer. Just the basics, the preliminary work itself will set you back quite a bit. So that's another thing that you need to be really cautious of. So this are basically the hurdles that we face.
Okay. So I understand Malaysia Kini is like fully online, right? Yeah. So how do you think the traditional news medium is still relevant with this development of technology?
Online is the future. Print media throughout the world are losing out.
Yeah.
Everything is online today. Even we have to compete with the likes of Facebook,
Yeah.
and social media platforms because You've got the younger generation who consumes news via Facebook, not going to news portals
Yeah.
for whatever articles that are shared and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's very important that we keep innovating and keeping abreast with whatever technological developments that are happening, so that we do not get left behind.
Okay.
So as far as the traditional media is concerned, I think in terms of advertising, there is still some scope for the traditional media. People are still wary about online advertising.
Yeah.
You know, advertisers. They still have a very conservative mindset when it comes to advertising. So in that sense, yes. But readership is definitely declining. You can check with the Star, you can check with Utusan and any other newspaper out there.
They're going online as well.
They're going online as well because the battle is online.
Yeah. So the first part is mostly about the journalism. So how do you have any say in the ethics of journalists nowadays? Because there's technology, internet. So there's a lot of issues like plagiarism, things like that.
As far as we are concerned, now the game may change, but the rules of the game will always remain the same. So ethics is something that we impress upon greatly on our journalists. So journalistic ethics will definitely, in my opinion, has to take precedence over everything else.
Okay.
You cannot compromise on ethics. You see, unfortunately, when it comes to social media, reporting on social media and all that, these things are compromised. But if you call yourself a news organization, then you have to subscribe to journalistic ethics, and that is something that Malaysia Kini has always emphasized upon, and it's something that Malaysia Kini will never compromise.
Okay. So anything that posted online, I mean, like in your social medias and stuff, do they get filtered? Do they?
When we post,
Yes.
yeah, of course, we have a social media editor. Everything
Okay.
that we post is edited and filtered, even on social media platforms.
Okay.
We make sure to our best efforts, we also monitor our comments. We need someone to moderate that on a full-time basis. We don't have someone to do that. But when we realize that some stories are dicey, we just disable comments. You see, in case, for example, if a politician passes away, so if we know that it's going to invite just a lot of flack, people are saying all good riddance and things like that, which is just not nice.
Yeah.
We just disable comments.
Okay.
It's sad that we cannot trust our commentators to come out to be civil, but
Yeah.
that's how it is today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's global. It's a
Right.
global thing as well. So I understand that the previous problems was the governments. Yeah, they are threatening and they are suppressing all the news that they want to deliver. So right now, what kind of problems that the agency face to deliver the news?
I'm having an interview actually. Right now, basically, the current government has not started oppressing or suppressing us yet.
Yeah.
Well, we still have our reservations. Power can change people, especially since Tun is there,
Yeah.
and Tun was one of the reasons why Malaysia Kini was born actually in the first place.
Okay.
So Tun has a whole history, a track record of stifling every freedom out there.
Yeah.
So we're taking all these promises with a pinch of salt. So far, there's been no repercussions or whatnot. There's been no threats or anything of that sort.
But any kinds of different problems while delivering the news, like the agency, from the agency.
If you're going to talk about problems, okay, for example, Malaysia Kini, I can talk about it from Malaysia Kini's perspective.
Yeah.
Before the elections,
Yeah.
before the change of government,
Yeah.
we were one of the only ones who were bold enough to criticize the government.
Yeah.
Now that BN is no longer in power, that market has opened up. It's no longer a niche market. Everyone is playing that game. You know.
You can talk about this side, you can talk about that side.
Is it?
Yeah.
So stuff that the Star and mainstream newspapers would have not touched in the past are kosher today. They can do it, you know. So that has sort of increased the competition for us.
Oh, I
Is
guess.
it?
Yeah. That's
But
true.
it's still the fact that we have a head start in this game.
Yeah.
We were the pioneers.
Yeah.
So we're constantly innovating. Like, for example, we are investing into data journalism because that's the future. You know, multimedia presentation of news. News remains the same, but the presentation of the news changes. You know,
Okay.
interactive mediums, whatnot, more infographics. You know, things like that. So because you see, even exclusives these days don't have a shelf life. The shelf life is just a couple of minutes. You can work for a week coming out on an exclusive. You write it, within 10 minutes, every other news portal is gonna
Yeah.
rewrite that
Yes.
story. Although they credit you,
Yeah.
but the person who's reading it is not interested in where the original source was from.
True.
He's just interested in the article or
Yeah.
what's being said.
Yeah.
You know? So even exclusives don't have shelf lives these days. See? So that's another challenge that we have.
Yeah.
So when we do it with multimedia presentations and whatnot, now that is something that is very difficult to replicate. That will have a longer shelf life.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of challenges that we're facing.
Yeah.
I mean, post May 9, it was a very interesting period for us as well. We all had to sit down and crack our heads and wonder, okay, what is it that we do now? You know?
Yeah.
Although we made a decision never to back down from what we stand for,
Yeah.
you know, that we will continue to hold the government of the day in check, you know, regardless of who it is.
Yeah.
So we even invited Najib over for an interview. He came here, you know. We continue to engage with UMNO leaders and all that because we believe that this country needs a strong opposition. For any democracy to work, there must be a strong opposition. You see?
Yeah.
And right now the opposition is in tatters. Okay? And that is dangerous.
Yeah.
When you have a single party system, a party that controls everything, that's going to be very, very dangerous. You know, if there is no check and balance.
Yeah.
So it is our duty to ensure that there is a strong opposition to keep these people in check. So we continue to hold the government in check, and you know we give a space for opposition views and whatnot. The problem with Malaysians is they don't celebrate people's power; they celebrate the people in power. They've got this idolizing thing, you know,
Yeah.
which is very dangerous. Politicians are politicians.
Because I think they only think about the benefits, you know.
Yeah, I mean, probably because there was this so much of dissatisfaction towards BN that what happened was when BN collapsed, you know, people are just, the euphoria, it's just this tremendous euphoria. That is, if you are a Harapan supporter, like,
Yeah.
okay? You're not necessarily even a Harapan supporter. I don't think I think there are more
Like,
BN haters than there are
Yeah.
Harapan supporters.
yeah.
You see? So
You don't
that
have
worked in
options.
favor of Harapan.
Yeah.
But the danger is when you start making excuses for politicians who are failing in their duties, who are failing in their responsibilities. For example, when Guan Eng was implicated in the bungalow scandal, there were people who claim, oh, this is just 2.6 million. Najib is 2.6 billion. You cannot do that. If you do that, your moral compass goes haywire. You can't say one murder is not as bad as 10 murders. So we should go after the person who committed 10 murders and forget about the person who committed one murder. You cannot. It has to, the law has to apply the same. The principles have to apply the same, you know, across the board. So that is the danger. Now, the Malaysian euphoria is very much on this side. So you see a lot of people making excuses. I mean, even we get criticized if we if you write stories that are negative about Harapan.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
People are saying, we are always held to ransom by this threat. We will cancel our subscription. We won't support Malaysia Kini anymore.
But
fair
if it's
enough.
wrong, then if it's the
Yeah.
truth, you have to. You have to.
The thing is, that's the thing, people are just very emotional.
Yes.
They don't see it from a rational perspective, they're just being very emotional. In fact, when we interviewed Najib, we were criticized. Why are you interviewing Najib? So why shouldn't we interview Najib?
Yeah.
He has every right to air his view as everyone else.
Yeah. True.
He has been charged, the prosecution has charged him. Now the onus is on the prosecution to prove the case. It's not our job to do it.
Yeah. We're just delivering the news.
Yeah.
So, after all these situations, from
Can I just switch on the fan?
yeah, sure.
It's really warm.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, so go on.
So after all the, from difficulties in delivering news because of the governments and the increasing competitions now, how does it affect you as an editor? And what are the risks before the election, after the election that you face?
How it affects me as an editor is there's not been a moment of respite since 2008, I will tell you that. Since that election, 2013, and eventually now, and what happened in May, work has just increased tenfold, 20-fold. So many things are happening. There's just, people are actually heading towards a point of burning out. Every day someone's getting charged. Every day someone's being questioned. This is post May 9 election. So when 2015, with the 1MDB scandal happened, there was another, roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
So there's just been no break for us. Every day we come into the office, we're not knowing what we're going to face today, what's going to happen today.
Yeah.
Like for example, today Negeri Sembilan just revoked Najib and Rosmas Dato Sri titles and all that.
Yeah.
So we don't know whether other states are going to follow suit. So every day something is happening. So work has become really, really taxing. Produce like 60, 70 stories a day. So that is. But in terms of risk, like I said, the risk has lessened very much. In the past, we always looked at the possibility of being arrested.
Yeah. So how was you at that time?
It's something that I came into this with my eyes wide open. I started off in the Sun as a cadet journalist, and tell you, in the Sun it was a different experience. Every time there was a press statement from Lim Kit Siang or Karpal Singh, we'll end up in the dustbin. So when we came to Malaysia Kini at the point when Mahathir was Prime Minister at that point of time, we already had prepared for the possibility of being arrested under the ISA. There was a contingency plan. Okay, if this person gets arrested, who takes over? If you get arrested, who takes over? How to operate? One thing good about online is you can operate remotely. You don't have to physically come into the office.
Yeah.
You see?
Okay.
So we had all these plans. So every day was, we didn't know whether we were going to last the next week or the month after that. Whether we were going to be arrested, whether we were going to be charged. But we believed in something, and we were willing to take the risks. Now that has diminished. But it started again during 2015 after the 1MDB scandal happened. It went back to that
period.
That tense period again, because people were being arrested for questioning, and all that. So personally, I think I've been in Malaysia Kini since 2001. I started here in 2001, and then I was here until 2010, and then I took a break. I came back into 2013. So during this period that I've been in Malaysia Kini, I think I've had my statements recorded by the police, like probably more than 100 statements You know? So, yeah, so that was one of the
Yeah.
occupational hazards that we face. Like,
Yeah.
every other day, every other week, someone was filing a report against Malaysia Kini,
Yeah.
accusing us of this, accusing us of that, you know.
Is there any hesitation when you want to like, okay, I want this story out? Do you have like some hesitations back then? Like, oh,
Usually,
I get in trouble.
yeah, we will find ways to go around it. I mean, everything we did was trouble. So,
yeah. So it doesn't matter.
yeah.
Doesn't really matter.
So, for example, like when they blocked access to Sarawak Report for the 1MDB stories, and we were told that you cannot quote whatever that's published in Sarawak Report. You will be held liable as well. So the way we went around that was to ask Claire to send us statements via email.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we wrote it saying this is a press statement from Sarawak Report. We were not quoting the Sarawak Report website, so technically we were okay. So these are the ways we try to improvise and work through the loopholes, and it also took a lot of effort where we worked. We tried to convince the government that we're not actually against them. We're just doing our job, you know. And it's not like, you know, we're here to topple you or anything like that. We're just doing journalism. That's it.
Yes. Yes.
You know, if you got something to hide, then journalism is a threat to you. You know, so I don't know whether you've heard of this. It's called the law of the excluded middle, where if something is not white, therefore it necessarily must be black. Okay?
There's not something, it's such thing as
There's no
in the
such thing as
middle.
all. There's various shades of grey in between.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but that's how people in power think. If you're not with us, you must be against us. Well, that's not what we were doing. We were not against anybody. We were just doing what we believed was good journalism and how journalism should be. So now, like I told you earlier, the risk has minimized.
Yeah.
It's diminished to a certain level. That's because the euphoria is still there and they are preoccupied with charging Najib and whatnot.
Yeah.
Give it a couple of months or a year or two, then
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah.
You know?
So with the heavy load of work, how do you work with your journalists?
We've got an incredible team. That's something that I'm truly grateful for. We have a team of like-minded people. If you don't share the same beliefs, there's no reason why you would come here. You see?
Okay.
Because if you think it's you've got to decide whether you consider journalism as a profession or a vocation. If you consider it a vocation, then Malaysia Kini is the place for you. If you consider it a profession, then there's so many other outlets that you can go to and earn a decent living without having this, you know, extra headaches of cops coming and recording your statement and whatnot. You know, why would you want to put yourself through that? So when someone is willing to put themselves through that, that means they know what they're getting into, and they're doing that because they believe in it. So in that sense, yeah, our journalists have been really great in that sense. They've never complained. You know, another great thing about Malaysia Kini is even the top bosses, we don't really take our designations very seriously. You know, so we all pitch in, we all do the same work. We work as a family, so that helps relieve the work burden a little. But it's crazy. At the end of the day, it's just crazy. It's just something that we got to deal with. We've tried increasing our manpower, our staff, and all that. And I mean, nowadays people are more willing, more open to the idea of joining Malaysia Kini.
Yeah.
Back then, even your parents would tell you don't.
Okay. So the next question is about editing. What are the challenges in editing? You can talk about general editing challenges. You can talk about your challenges in Malaysia Kini.
Editing challenges, I mean, basically, an editor serves as the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Okay? He's the final gatekeeper. Now, an editor's job is to ensure that whatever articles that is written, apart from the language, it has also got to conform to the standards of journalism. It has to be objective. It must not be editorialized. It must have both sides of the picture. Anytime someone makes an allegation against another person, it is incumbent upon us to contact the other person as well to get his or her response.
Okay.
You cannot just accept this allegation to be the gospel truth and write it. So these are the things that an editor has to ensure that whatever is published satisfies all these requirements. So basically that's the function of an editor. So in terms of difficulties, you get a poorly written copy and you've got to rewrite it. Some people will say you're vomiting blood in the process. But you see, the problem with journalism is that there's some people who are great at getting stuff, news. They've got excellent PR skills. But they can't write.
Okay.
They cannot string a coherent sentence together. So you got to recognize these individual strengths and weaknesses. Some people can write beautifully, but they can't get stories. You see? So you just have to work with these individual strengths and weaknesses. Make some compromises. We have people like that up there. Who can just with one phone call get MACC to talk to them and police to talk to them. But when the story comes to you, you're going to spend like 2 hours wondering what the hell is happening.
I was just about to ask you what are the common mistakes that journalists do over these 20 years you're with Malaysia Kini, but I guess that's it. You know, sometimes people can get stories but they cannot write.
And journalism has changed a lot in the last 20 years. You see, when I joined journalism, I was 20. I started off as a cadet reporter at The Sun. Back then, the editors were absolute lunatics.
Cool.
Seriously, they were just bloody lunatics. And you improved not because you wanted to excel in your work, but because you want to spare yourself public humiliation. You get berated in front of your colleagues. Can you imagine? In The Sun back then, there was a terminal of computers. This was in the late 90s. I'm talking about the late 90s. A terminal of computers. You don't even have your individual PC. So the entire newsrooms share these computers.
You can like work there, work here. Okay.
So when you're typing a story, you're a junior reporter, you're typing a story, you'll have your senior standing behind you, kicking your chair, tapping your head, telling you to fuck off and do it faster because they'll tell you things like that. You're writing a rubbish story, why are you wasting so much of time? I've got a page one story to write. Hurry up, get lost, Your editors who will tear your copies and throw it in your face. I was trained by an editor who apparently in the 1970s threw a typewriter at someone and sent him to a hospital.
So like right now, do you still have time to guide all these journalists?
We do it. We do it in a much mellower way.
Okay.
Now, if you do those kind of things, you probably get sued.
So, for you as an editor, when is the crucial time for you?
It's a crucial time. There are various crucial periods. Parliament is one particular crucial time. Budget, AGMs of respective parties, things like that. And another thing that's different online is that if it's an important event like a court case or whatnot, we have live reporting.
Okay.
By elections or elections, we have live reporting. So that's really done at breakneck speed. We've got like 5-6 people on the ground using their phones and sending 1-2 lines, and you've got to constantly edit and update the live reports. And this can go on for a few hours, so it's really crazy in that sense. So like I said, since 2015, every day is crucial. There's never been one point where there was a let up. It's just been working at a tremendous pace for 3 years. And The change of government has not stopped it either. Now you've got everybody being charged, everybody being taken to court, raiding here, houses are being raided there, offices are being raided here. Yeah.
I'm sure you have some dilemmas while working as an editor. So when do you think you are tested morally, ethically, while doing your job?
When am I tested?
Yeah,
Good question.
yeah. As an editor.
It's not really being an editor. I've always seen myself as a journalist.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
You've got to be a journalist.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Everything else is secondary. This
Yeah.
is just designations. Yeah, I mean, during these peak times, you really feel tested. You ask, you question yourself, my God, what the hell am I doing here? You know, I should just go to PR or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah.
But the problem with news is, especially hard news, it can be addictive. The 3 years I took a break, there was a time I worked with a magazine, you know, fancy assignments, hotels, wine and dine. It didn't work for me. I missed news. I missed the fast pace of news, the politics. Because I'm passionate about politics, you know. So it became addictive, and I had no other alternative but to come back to Malaysia Kini. But once you're here, you regret that decision. Once you go out, you regret it even more.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, so it's very difficult for me to speak in general terms because Malaysia Kini has been a very unique experience
Yeah,
in the Malaysian
yeah.
context.
Yeah.
I suppose if you go and speak to an editor in the Star or whatnot, their idea of what is crunch time or what are the difficulties they face would be different. Because they deal with a bigger newsroom, they deal with regional bureaus,
Yeah.
and they deal with an assortment of news articles.
Yeah.
Not necessarily news, they've got various sections.
Yeah, yeah.
You see? So the challenges there are very different. Here it was all about politics and all about waking up in the morning, wondering whether you're going to be arrested tonight,
Yeah.
whether you're going to be slapped with a lawsuit that's going to leave you bankrupt for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So every day you come to work wondering, shit, you know, why do I do this?
Yeah.
You know? So it was a very unique experience in that sense.
Okay. So for you yourself, you know, this work is very fast paced, very hectic. How do you think what are the ways to be a good editor?
Why is the focus only on being an editor and not the journalist?
Because it's mostly on editing.
Okay.
You know, it's more about the errors and mistakes. So once the news come out, they will look for the gatekeeper, right? Like why you let the story out, or if something happened in the news printed wrong templates, everything. You know, the one that they will get is the editor.
I think what is most important for an editor is to be objective,
Okay.
you know? Because the moment you let your personal sentiments or affiliations affect your work, then your end product is not going to reflect objectivity. It's going to be lopsided. So for me, my personal belief is that you have to be objective. You know? You have to accept that everyone has a right to air their views. Yeah? You may not it's basically it goes back to that cliche of Voltaire saying, you know, I may disagree with what you say, but I will defend it with my life. Your right to say it. So it's just that you may not believe that person, you may not agree with that person, but you must learn to celebrate the diversity of opinions. If you do not do that, then you will start censoring or deliberately twisting and manipulating
Yeah,
articles to
yeah,
suit
yeah.
your personal agenda.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see?
True.
So that is one of the greatest things, or the greatest obstacles that a person may face in doing an editing job. Do not let your personal. I mean, you can take a stand. You can take a stand on anti-corruption and whatnot. If you do not believe what this person is telling you, then do the groundwork, do the investigation to prove that this person lied. You see? But don't deny him the right to say the things that he wants to say.
Yeah. I guess that's when you're tested morally,
Yeah, you are.
because you're a human. You have your own opinions. You have your own beliefs. So it's hard to be like very balanced and not to be one-sided.
Yeah, that's true. But in the past, we used to tell people that when they accused us of being pro-opposition, we used to tell them, our content was 60% opposition news and 40% government news. This is because the government has so many outlets to disseminate its information.
Yeah. They have
You
the
know?
ownership.
They've got newspapers, they've got televisions, they've got radio stations, whereas these guys have nothing. So it's only common sense that you give them more space. You see? So that's what we did. So now we're balancing it more. Yeah. So like you said, you get tested at that point of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
But-
sure there's a lot of clash. Like you guys report this, and the other newspapers report the other things, the other side of the story.
Yeah, well,
So that comes to my question. Like, for example, do you need to paraphrase all the interviews? So as a journalist or as an editor, how do you make sure that it is what the other person is trying to say, and you guys are not taking it the wrong way? Because you want to try to avoid that, right?
yeah, of course, it's very important that we do not misquote or misrepresent
Yeah,
someone.
yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
So we make sure that if it's our journalists have recordings
Yeah.
and whatnot to back up whatever that is being said. So even when you paraphrase whatever a person has said, it is important to ensure that the meaning that he is trying to convey is not altered.
Yeah.
Okay, you can paraphrase it for brevity, for grammar, language purposes, and whatnot, but you cannot twist the message. So these are the things that you have to keep an eye out for.
Yeah. If I know it's definitely out of your hands. I mean, like you have a lot of journalists working with you, but if they come up with a story and they write one story, how do you really sure that this is what he's trying to say? This is not a misinterpretation.
The thing is,
Yeah.
we have a pool of sub-editors
Yeah.
who will edit the stories, and they are expected to ensure that the stories that are edited and published satisfy these requirements.
Yeah.
But if there are certain sensitive stories, then I will personally handle them, or the editor-in-chief Stephen Gunn will personally handle them.
Do you still have the time, to look up back for the recordings to really make sure that this is
Yeah,
what
yeah,
he's
yeah.
trying to say?
You have to. It's not a question of time. It's a question of ethics.
Yeah.
The competition now is because of speed. Who puts up the news first? That's
Yeah,
very important in online reporting. But that should not come at the expense of accuracy and facts.
So how do you think, if there's any proof with mistakes, how do you think it will affect the news agents?
Of course, it affects your reputation. And with us, if there have been instances where we have made mistakes, and when that happens, we include an editor's note admitting that a mistake was made and correct that mistake. Okay?
Okay. So you have sub editors.
Yeah.
So they will filter all the common mistakes, grammar, languages, spelling. Okay. So as a journalist, what is the best way to prevent errors in writings?
to be attentive, basically, to make sure you've got all the facts, not to be carried away, not to be emotional, you know, to ensure that the sources that you're talking to do not have an agenda of their own. So basically, it's just make sure you do your homework. You know, don't be lazy. Don't slack off because you know.
It's gonna get to you later.
Yeah, well, it gets to you, but it also you may end up maligning another person's reputation.
Yeah.
So you've got to keep these things in mind.
Yeah. So in Malaysia kini, you have how do you segregate your departments? Like you have the journalists.
We publish in 4 languages.
Okay.
Okay, so we have the English desk, we have the BM desk, we have the Chinese desk,
Okay.
and we've got the Tamil desk that
Okay.
works remotely, you know, and we have Kini TV, which is the TV unit,
Yeah.
and then we've got our sub editors, and then we've got our social media team, you know, and so the news process is like this. We have a email through which articles are sent.
Okay.
It's called the editorial email. Okay. So now, say for example, someone they send news statements, everything through here.
Okay.
So if someone sends a story, okay,
Okay.
for example, this is just additions to the story,
Okay.
right? The sub-editors, whoever is free, will respond like this, taking. So the other editors will know that the story has been taken by someone. Okay.
So you guys work online as well.
Yeah.
So this is how you liaise with other
Other
departments.
people, and we've got a WhatsApp group,
Okay.
which is freaking crazy.
Yeah. I'm sure it's like.
Yeah, it goes on.
Yeah.
You know, so ideas are discussed here, whatnot, changes, everything is discussed here.
Yeah.
You see? And then we also have an editor's email where the editors can do discussions of their own. You see? So that's how work is done.
Okay. So can you further explain on the precaution that you take as an editor to ensure that the news delivered are the truth to the audiences?
Of course, we take every necessary precaution to ensure that what we write is true, because at the end of the day, it's our reputation that's online. You know?
Okay.
So that's something that we impress upon all our journalists. You know, we're not in the business of telling tales and falsehood. We're in the business of talking facts. You know, we have a sacred duty to inform the people. You know, so we should not take that lightly, and we should not be cutting corners. So we take a lot of responsibility in what we do.
Okay.
So we ensure that everyone in this organization is aware of that. Because the thing is, most of them here are been journalists before. Everyone comes from different newspapers and whatnot. Sorry, one moment, eh? Yeah, ma? I'm just talking to interview. அதான் அந்த பிள்ளைங்க. Okay. Yeah, sorry.
So last question. If, like you say, you all have been, there's some mistakes that you've been doing. If it's like a big, mistake that you've done, how do you think it can be recovered? Let's say if somebody sue Malaysia Kini.
No, usually what happens is, before May 9, if it was a big mistake, there was no way of recovering, or we just land in jail.
Yeah.
But you see,
Definitely you guys have to prevent that.
yeah. So basically, if it's in the context of a legal suit, what usually happens is, if someone has an issue with a particular story,
Yeah.
and they will normally engage a lawyer to send us a legal letter.
Yeah.
That legal letter will contain certain demands, like, retract this story within 48 hours, publish an apology, failing which our client reserves the right to initiate legal action or whatnot. Now, that is when we will discuss whether we want to stand by our story or not. You know, if we believe in our story, then we are willing to go to court. We will reply that legal letter saying we are standing by the story. Do what you want. You know, but like I said, if we did make a mistake, we have no problems owning up to it, because that is also part of your responsibility as a journalist. If you had happened to have misinformed the people, then it's also your duty and obligation to let the people know that you had made a mistake and set the record straight.
Yeah.
But if we stick by it, we'll go to court. We have gone to court numerous times. You know.
Do you
Only
think
thing
by
is it's
delivering
expensive.
this kind of news, it actually, make audiences trust in you?
Which kind of news?
Like, the news that the other agencies are not reporting. This kind of news that, there's legal action that has to be taken to you guys. Do you think in delivering all this unique news, you actually gain trust from the
Yes,
audiences?
I think we have gained tremendous trust over the past 20 years.
Yeah.
We were seen as an outlet that provided news that no other organization was willing to do.
Yeah.
You know, so the trust factor is always there. And the trust factor is, that's. I don't think we have any problems with,
Yeah. Audiences.
our readers trusting us.
Yeah.
You know,
Because you guys survive from subscriptions as well.
it's something that we have built
Yeah.
over the years.
Yeah.
And we've proven time and again that we don't, simply malign people or come up with false stories. None of us have got political agendas here. None of us are affiliated to. You will not find any party members here. We're just journalists.
Okay. If I have any other questions, can I email you?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah?
I hope I was of help.
Yeah, of course. And I have to write it again. All the answer.